Hi, and welcome
And
to our Zoom
I'm going to have
mini-class
to go
with
a bit
Jane
slow
Renton
because I
on
feel there's
how
a bit
to
of a
knit a
lag
cable.
on my camera.
Thanks, Jane.
But you can see the drape on this. And you'll hear me talk about drape often because for me, the drape can make or break a project. So this double knit shows up so beautifully the definition of cable knitting. And you can just see how clearly it's showing up on your screen. The other thing that this double knit works really nicely for is lace work. And if you look at this, you can see the definition of the lace pattern as well, and how beautifully it shows up. So I'm totally in love with this double knit, really enjoying it. And once it's been washed and blocked, it's just so soft. And I've worn this a couple of times already, and I absolutely love wearing it. So today we're going to look at cable knit, and one of the first things I want to talk to you about is needles. So we all know your normal straight needles, and I don't have any straight needles anymore. I've got rid of them all because I use circular needles, and they are just so much easier to use, even if I'm knitting straight and not knitting in the round. Knitting this, I knit it in the round. There's no seams, it's just knitted completely round. I don't like sewing up things. So when I've knitted something, it must be finished. And there must just be the beginning and ending threads to stitch away, not a whole lot of sewing. So I tend to knit often in the round and knit a steek if I'm knitting a cardigan with buttons up the front. And then the frightening thing is taking scissors and then just cutting through your work. But I'll do a demonstration on that one day, but not just yet. So there are a number of different circular needles that you can get. There are those that are fixed, where the cable does not come out, and you buy a set size needle with a set length of cable. There are other sets where you buy your needles, whatever size you want, and you buy your cables, whatever length you want. If you buy a 60 centimeter cable, that is the measurement from the tip of the needle along the cable to the tip of the next needle. So 60 centimeters isn't the length of the cable itself. It's from needle point to needle point once you've connected it. For lace knitting, when I'm doing really fine lace knitting, I use sharp needles, also interchangeable. So these are my needles with the cable for knitting with lace. For socks, I don't know if you've ever tried knitting with these needles. They are really tiny, and I feel quite cack-handed sometimes, but to knit a sock on this, because your sock is only that big and round, and it's perfect. I'm sure many of you know about the DPNs or double pointed needles, and I don't use these anymore because I much prefer the circular needles. It just makes life so easy. So when you're knitting with cable, at least when you're going to knit a cable pattern, the other thing you need to consider is your cable needles. And there are a variety of cable needles on the market. There is the ease with a little V or a dent in the needle, and you hold the stitches in that point while you move them backwards or forwards. There are other needles, and they come in different sizes. There are these needles from Knit Pro, but if I show you can you see it's got notches in it? Those notches catch the stitches. So when you're working, you end up with stitches caught and it does not go smoothly. So as pretty as they are, I don't recommend them. So what my son did for me, can you see how he's taken those edges off? I need to get to an angle where it's clear. Can you see how he's taken those angles off? And that is easier to use because now the needle's not going to slip out of my work. So that is usually the needle that I prefer to use. The other thing I want to talk about is just something I want to say quickly is for those of you who haven't used Cowgirlblues yarn, I absolutely love it because besides it being so soft and colors are beautiful and everything else, it's color fast. So even when I wash it, because I wash all my work before, well, once it's completed and before I wear it, and then block it, no color comes out in the hand wash. And I've used many, many yarns, and I have a selection of yarns in my cupboards and drawers and all over the place. And there's not many that I can say that are color fast. And I am super impressed, Bridget. It's really, really great. And so what I've done is I've cast on stitches onto a sock needle so that we just have a few stitches to work with to start off with. And you cast onto a circular needle just the same as you would cast on to a straight needle. And just as with a straight needle, it ends up looking the same if I stretch it out. So now if I was going to be knitting a straight thing, I would make sure that my yarn was on my left and I would start knitting. But that would not join my work. So I need to, from where I finished casting off, I need to start knitting at the beginning again. And I need to make sure that there's no twist in my work. I need to untwist it, and then I can start knitting. And you can already see it's closing as I go. And if I were doing a rib, I would just keep going, working in the round. And just go around and around and around.
Jane,
what I didn't show you, yeah.
Jane, sorry, if we want to follow along with the cable process this morning, I've got a cable needle with me and I'm quite keen to actually try it as you go, and others might be as well.
Yeah.
Should we just cast on a few stitches while you're talking? Does it make a difference if we do it in the round or not?
No, so what I've done is I've got a sample here which I'm going to be showing you the cable work on.
Okay, perfect.
And you can cast on, I think I've got 30 stitches.
30, okay.
Yeah, so if you want to do that, you can go ahead and do that.
Okay, perfect.
So what I forgot to show you though is before I start knitting in the round, I insert a stitch marker so that I know where the beginning and ends of my rounds are according to the pattern. So then I would just carry on knitting. And there's my beginning round of my round with my stitch marker. And it's all joined.
Jane, can I ask you a question? It's Janine.
Certainly, yeah.
Can you just say again, why did you turn your needles around like that to start the other way around? Can you just say that again, please?
So if I didn't turn my needles around, so let me go back there. If I didn't turn my needles around, and knitted as if I were going to be knitting straight, then there would be no join. I would just keep going backwards and forwards. But I need to turn my needle over so that I can join the end with the beginning.
Okay.
Okay, so then I just, hang on, stitch marker. Don't forget stitch marker. And then here, I join my end to my beginning and unknit. And I've got it in the round.
Okay, and that's how you close, so there's no big gap of wool to join, to bring the pieces together. No.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. So
Yeah,
then I can just carry on knitting. And when I finish the round, I just slip the stitch marker onto the needle and carry on again.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I've done is I've cast on 30 stitches. So if you want to have a go at doing some cable knitting, you're welcome to join me here. So what I've done is I'm going to show you first of all doing a cable stitch without a cable needle. So it's just a single cable. And can you see how I've got it so that you've got a little twist going to the right?
Yeah.
And what I've done here is I've played. So I've got almost like a snake effect. Here I alternated with the needle in front and needle behind, needle in front, needle behind. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. And for me, to do a knit one, purl one rib or knit two, purl two rib is plain and ordinary. And I've got it on this cardigan that I've made. And to me, it doesn't actually do anything for the jersey itself. But when you add something like this, it creates extra interest to the cardigan. And so the work of the cardigan actually starts from the moment that you cast on, not from once you finish your ribbing. And I love this as a rib. It's what I used on the cowl. And if you look at it, it's got such a nice stretch. It's a really, really beautiful stretch.
Jane, with this kind of ribbon, would you use a stretchy cast on?
No, I don't. You don't need to.
Okay.
You don't need to. So this is my cast on edge. And there's no pull.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it works. I've tried different stretchy cast-ons and they end up being too stretchy and almost more stretchy than the ribs that you choose to work with. So I've got a cast-on method that I use that works for anything really. Okay, so when I do, I'm just working through 3 stitches to get to my beginning. If I want this cable stitch to lie to the right as it is, then what I need to do is the second stitch on my needle has to move over the first stitch, okay? So I'm going to knit that first stitch, but I'm taking nothing off. And then I'm going to knit the first stitch, and then I slip them both off. And that gives the twist. I'll do that again for you. So I've knit the second stitch on the needle. I don't take it off, and then I knit the first stitch on the needle, and then
Jane, you're a bit high on the camera. Can you put your hands a little bit lower? Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'll do that again for you. So first stitch, I leave, go to the second stitch and knit. Then I go to the first stitch and knit, and then I remove them both from the needle. Okay, I'll do that again for you. Second stitch and knit, first stitch and knit, and remove them both, and I've got my twist going to the right. If I want my stitch to end up going to the left, I'm just going to where I've got this twist going. Then what I'm going to do is, you can see here, on the previous stitch, I had my yarn, at least my stitch, lying to the right. So now, because I've got the snaky effect, I'm going to want it to lie to the left. So what I do is I go into the back of the second stitch and knit, and then into the front of the first stitch. And then I remove them both. And can you see it's now making that stitch lie to the left? I'll do that again for you. So I go to the back of the second stitch and knit. Whoops. Back of the second stitch and knit. And then to the front of the first stitch and knit. And then take them both off. And that makes my stitch lie to the left.
So Jane,
Okay.
you're effectively working all the way across the row. It's a 1 2 1 2 repeats.
It's 2 1. It's a 2 1. So I've got 2 stitches for the twist, and then 1 purl.
And then you've got a purl stitch in the middle.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So that's why it's almost like a rib stitch.
And then
but it's 2 and 1.
And if we look at your swatch in your hand there, to the right of your thumb, it's all been done leaning to the right.
All of those have been done leaning to the right.
Okay.
Those ones are mixed left and right.
So you mix left and right along the same row?
So along the same 2 stitches.
Okay, so one row went right, the next row
one row,
left.
Yes, yeah. Okay. So here it was 1 row to the back of the stitch on the second stitch, and on the next row it was to the front.
Okay.
Okay. But now,
sorry for another question. Sorry.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing it's a 3-stitch pattern. So you need to have a multiple of 3 stitches if you want to do this. Cool.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. This is the mathematician here.
No, that's fine. So I'm finishing off there, and so because I'm knitting this on the straight, I've got to do my wrong side row. Yeah. And when you do your wrong side row, all you do is follow the pattern of the stitches that you've got. So here I've got my knit stitch, and then I've got my 2 purl, which were the twisted stitches in the right side row. Okay, and my purl stitch. And I would just keep on doing this all the way along. If I were knitting in the round, I wouldn't reverse my work. I would still be working on the right side, but I would do a plain row. So knitting in the round, I would knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1. So you only do your twist every alternate row. So it's either every alternate row when you've got your right side facing you and you're working in the round, and it's every alternate row when you're working straight, because the other row is knitted with the wrong side facing you. Am I making sense?
I think so. So it's within a row, it's a 3-stitch repeat.
Yes, that's right.
And it's within the knit, it's a 2-row repeat.
Yes, absolutely.
So on one row, you're doing this little sort of faux mock cable. And on the next row, it's a combination of knit and pearls, depending on which side you're on, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going back to the beginning, because when you do cable, you then, so if we say I've finished the rib now, and I want to set up for my cable pattern, I've always got to do a setup row, okay? And the setup row is the row that I'm going to have as the start for my cable. So what I've done is I've worked out what I need to be doing here. And for those who want to knit along, I'm going to be doing a 2x2 cable twist, and then I'm going to be doing a lattice similar to what I've done here, just to give you an idea of 2 different types of cable stitch.
So Jane,
to set that up,
for this, I'm going to have to just make a little swatch, and I'll come back and do the rib afterwards. So I still need the 30 stitches.
Yes.
Cast on 30 stitches and do 1 knit row, and then I should be ready to, or just cast on the 30 stitches and then go straight to
just cast on your 30 stitches.
Okay.
Cast on your 30 stitches. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to do a 2x2 cable rib. We're going to do a 2x2, but I'm going to make it twisted all the way. I'm just trying to see if I've got that on my jersey. No, I don't. I don't have that on my jersey, but it's here anyway. And then we're going to do a little bit of a trellis work, just so that you can get an idea of of how to hold your needle. Once you've got used to holding your needle, then any cable pattern works, and you'll be able to work with any cable stitch. It's really, really easy. So we're going to start off. I always slip my first stitch, except if I'm working in the round. There's no first stitch to slip. It's just the first stitch after my stitch marker. So because it's the first stitch after a stitch marker, you would knit that stitch. You wouldn't end up slipping anything. So I slip my first stitch when I'm working in the round, and I'm going to knit 4. And purl 2. Knit 2. Purl 4. If you need me to slow down, please say so. Knit 4. And purl 4.
Sorry, Jane, can you just go back to, you started with knit 4, purl 2.
Knit 2.
Then you knit 2, purl 4.
And knit 4, purl 4.
Knit 4, purl 2, knit 2, purl 4. Knit 4, purl 4.
So it's, yeah, and then, what did I say? 4, it's 4 purl, 4 knit, 4 purl, and then 2 knit.
Okay.
2 purl.
And 4 knit.
Except I've gone wrong somewhere, but that doesn't matter because I can still show you. I don't know if I've got 30 stitches, but that's enough to be able to show you what to do anyway. And then on the wrong side row, we're just going to follow the stitches that you've set up as your setup row, and you're going to knit the stitches and purl the stitches as they're showing on your needle. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So Jane, just to check, by my count, what you've worked across is 28 stitches, not 30.
Okay.
So 28 is what we need. So it's knit 4, purl 2.
Yeah, so just knit the last few stitches on your needle.
Yeah, I'll just knit 2 together or something so that I have the right number.
Yeah, you can just leave them as they are, just knit them. It's not going to change the pattern of what we're doing.
Okay.
Who else is knitting along? Susan, I saw you say something, but I didn't hear you. Your microphone is muted. Oh, you're knitting as well. Okay. So when you're ready, then we'll move on to the next step. And this is where you're going to need your cable needle. I'm just going to grab a drink of water while you're catching up. Okay, are you there? Okay, so whenever I do a cable, and you'll see it in all cable patterns, there's always purl stitches between the work that you do. So if you look at my jersey here, my cardigan here, here is a pattern, and so that that pattern stands out, there's purl stitches in between, and then another pattern and purl stitches in between. And that's what creates the definition of the cable, is having those purl stitches between the patterns. So my first stitch is a purl, and then I'm going to start with my 2x2 twist. So you need your cable needle, and I find it easier to start off with the cable coming to the front of your work. So I want these 2 stitches to cross over in the front of the next 2 stitches. So I'm going to hold that needle in the front and knit the next 2 stitches. I'm then going to take that needle, and I need to knit those 2 stitches now. So that needle comes in place so that I can pick up those stitches, and I've got my knobbly needle. Actually, I'm going to change my needle. And I'm going to knit those 2 stitches. And as I knit each stitch, I take it off the needle and I move it out the way. And then I'm going to purl the next 2 stitches to give me that stitch definition that I'm wanting. Excuse my knot in the way, it's on the purl stitch. And I'm now going to create a trellis work. So as with this, I need my plain stitches to be coming forward. So again, my next 2 stitches are knit stitches, and I want them forward. So I'm putting them onto my needle, and I'm holding them in the front of my work. And my next stitch on my needle is a purl stitch. So I need to purl that stitch. These 2 stitches on this needle are knit stitches. So I'm now going to knit those 2 stitches. And something that I encourage you to do as well is when you're knitting with cable, find a way that is comfortable to hold your cable needle. Let me come down a bit so that you can see, so that you're not constantly putting it down and picking it up and putting it down and picking it up. So what I do is I've worked a way of holding it in my fingers. So when I need it, I pull it out and I can carry on working with it. And when I've finished using it, I put it between my fingers. Okay, that'll just make your cable knitting experience that much easier. So I've got 3 purl stitches and then 4 knit stitches. So those 4 knit stitches are going to end up being split for the trellis. So what it means is I've got to purl 2 stitches, and now to have those 2 knit stitches come forward, that purl stitch has to go to the back. And I'm going to knit those 2 stitches. I now need to purl this stitch that's on my cable needle. Okay, any questions so far?
Yes. Does this eventually all make sense?
It will. So I'm doing the next part of the trellis. So again, these next 2 stitches have to be held at the front. And I purl the next stitch. And the 2 stitches on my needle are knit stitches. So I'm going to knit them. And once we've done the wrong side row, it'll be easier for you to see what you've been doing. By moving stitches one across the other as we are, the work looks quite tight. So you don't see it. You don't see the pattern forming on the row that you're working on. You only see it once you've done your wrong side row. So my next stitch is a purl and a purl. And to form the trellis, my next 2 knit stitches have to come to the front. So I've got to take that purl stitch to the back of the work so that the next 2 knit stitches can come to the front. Oops, it's a knit stitch, not a purl stitch. And on my cable needle, I've got a purl stitch. So you see the work is at the back and it's a purl stitch. So to make it easier to purl, I've got to bring that needle to the front of the work so that I can then purl it easily. And remove it. And then I've got 2 knit stitches again. I'm going to hold them in front and pull. So now these 2 stitches are still going to stay in the front, and I'm knitting them. And it's much easier for your knit stitches in front because your needle is automatically in the front. And I can put that down for the wrong, while I do the wrong side row. So Bridget, you've given up knitting.
So I have, I've got some questions because everything wasn't matching according to where I should have been following along. And
yeah.
So I wanted to see on the wrong side row, you're simply knitting the knits and purling the pearls.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
The wrong side row is always easy.
It's always easy, yes. So you can
if you were
see,
knitting
so I've got,
around, you'd do the same thing. You'd knit the knits and purl the pearls.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So every alternate row is to knit the knits, as I've just done, and purl the pearls. And it is so easy because you don't need to consider the pattern. You just follow what's in front of you on your needle.
Okay. I think, yeah, I got quite confused on the first row, the cable row, because I don't know if I wasn't concentrating on the wrong days to start with, but my stitches weren't matching up with yours. But I think what would be helpful, and of course that row is always the most difficult because you can't see where the cable is. So you have to know where you want it to go.
Yes. So sorry, I've got a knot there. I'm just going to try and push it through to the back.
You need to bring your hands down again a little bit because you're disappearing off the top of the...
Oh, sorry.
You go? No, that's okay.
Sorry. Okay. So now you can see what's happening. I said you'd be able to see it on your, after you've done your wrong side row.
Yeah.
So here you can see I've got the twist.
Yeah.
And here you can see these 2 are starting to come together. These 2 stitches are going apart, whereas these 2 are coming together again.
Okay. So can you go back, so from that view, can you go back to what we did on the first cable row and just explain how you did that in terms of the number of stitches?
I'm not really understanding your question.
So I think what I had on my needles was knit 4, purl 2, knit 2, purl 4, knit 4, purl 4, knit 2, purl 2, knit 4. And so can you help me make sense of how to read that into the cable?
Okay, so that's your setup row.
Yeah.
If I bring my piece of paper here, and you can see I've got my knit 1, these purl 1, knit 4, purl 2, knit 2.
I think the 2 extra stitches that got from 28 to 30 were the 1 purl on each end. Your head appeared in the camera, sorry. There we go, thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, so these 4 stitches are going to be a cable twist.
Yes.
Okay. The cable twist, when it's a 2 by 2 cable twist, it's 4 stitches and you end up cabling every 4 rows. Okay, so here I'm on my second row now. So those first 4 stitches, I'm not going to twist. They're going to be plain. So, and the same goes if you're doing a 3 by 3 cable. it's 6 stitches, so every 6 rows. So 2 by 2 cable is 4 stitches. It's every 4 rows. So my first row was the twist. I've done a wrong side row. I'm now doing a right side row. My wrong side row will still be plain.
Yeah.
And then on the 4th row, I twist again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then the next few stitches are to do a simple trellis. So if I
trellis, what do you mean? Can you show us on the blue thing what simple trellis is?
These stitches where they start together there and then come together there. So you see I've got 2 stitches together, and here they go apart.
Mm-hmm.
And as they go apart, they join from the previous one.
Okay.
Okay. So what we're doing here is a simple trellis. And I now again need these stitches to go over one. There it is. So to make these stitches move over one, I bring them to the front of the work. And the next stitch is a cable stitch. It is not a cable, a purl stitch. So I'm going to purl it. And then I want to knit the 2 stitches that are on my cable needle. And here you're going to see how the next lot of stitches come together. Because this stitch is a purl stitch, and it's going to the back to bring these stitches to the front. And can you see how it's brought those together now? So the first row, you aren't usually able to tell exactly what needs to happen because it's your setup row. And once you've done your setup row, it's then much easier to follow what's going on. Once you've got a few stitches on your needle, and you can see what's happening with the pattern. So we can already start to see what's happening with the pattern. So you see those 2 have come together, and those 2 that were together are going apart. Can you see? Okay. So I want the next lot together. So my purl stitch to the back. And
Jane, sorry, that's all by bringing the stitches front and backwards, which makes the pattern.
Sorry, say again?
I say that's by bringing the stitches forward and backwards, which makes the pattern.
That makes the pattern, yes. Yes. Okay. And always the purl stitches go to the back. You never bring a purl stitch to the front, because you're then going to lose your pattern, which is created by the knit stitches, because it's going to end up having a purl stitch in the way. So the definition is created by keeping your purl stitches to the back. Okay, so my next 2 stitches are knit, and on my needle I have a purl stitch, and I can bring it forward and knit it. These purl it, sorry. And then what have I got? Okay, then this one is, these 2 stitches are going to the left, and because they're knit stitches, they come forward. Knit stitches only go back when you're doing a plait or a cable twist. When you're doing something like this, where the trellis work is proud, like on here, your knit stitches always come forward. So I need to purl that next stitch that was on my needle, bring my cable needle up, and knit those 2 stitches. And I'm just going to the end, and then I need to do the wrong side row. And once I've done this, you'll see much easier again what I'm doing here. So I'm just going to go quickly through. Are there any questions while I'm doing this?
Jane, can I just double check with you? So
yeah.
When you're cabling, there are two things happening simultaneously. One is creating a definition of the cable. And to do that, you're pulling stitches forward and taking a purl stitch to the back so that it creates that raised, the actual cable itself. And then the second part of the patterning with cables is making them move and travel and twist and turn and interact. And that's the process of, once you can see your cable definition, either putting more purl stitches between the elements of the cable or fewer purl stitches between them so that they almost move outwards or inwards.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are two things happening at once. So here I've done the last time I did a twist on this 2x2 cable twist was 4 rows ago. So this is now the 4th row, so I'm going to twist it again.
Sorry, and before you start to twist, can you just show us on the blue finished pattern, what do you mean by the twist?
So here is the twist.
Okay.
Can you see I've twisted that section? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist it by bringing the first 2 stitches forward. It was forward in the first row, so I'm keeping it forward. Okay, and I'm going to knit those next 2 stitches. And then I'm knitting those. And can you see as I take it forward, there's my twist. And this is going to give me, it's a bit tight sometimes, and I've got a cable needle that's thicker than my needle. And can you see how I'm getting that first pattern going? So now on the next row, I can either decide, it's not the next row, the next set of pattern that I've got is I can either make these 2 lines of the trellis crossover, as I did here, and here I did a double crossover. You can do it as a single crossover, or they've come together, so I can now make them go away again. So it all depends on what I'm wanting to create. So if I bring my paper in front, I can either have it so that they end up doing that, so they come together and then go away again. I can have it so that they come together and cross over, or I can have it so that they come together and twist, as I've done here.
Your last
Sorry, I'm not very good at drawing.
Off the screen, off the edge. You need to just move your paper to the left.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you. So this was away. This is a crossover, and this is where I did a double twist. So there's 3 different ways of showing your cable twist. So if I look at the sample work that I did, here I've done them so that they just cross over. Here I did it so that it twists, a double twist in the middle. And whenever you do cable, you want your patterning to match up. So here you can see, if I follow this line, it goes and then goes underneath that row. Here it's underneath the first one, so on the next leg, it goes over it. If it were always above, it will create a different pattern. And that's okay too. So it all depends on the look that you're wanting to create. So with my first 4 stitches that I had here, those, can you see? Let me move it there. Those first 4 stitches where I've just done my 4th row, I'm creating this twist here. And it can either be a 2 by 2 or a 3 by 3. Going 4 by 4, it can be very tight, and you end up, it's not showing on this because I think I've blocked this, so it doesn't show up very much. But there, holes end up appearing when you've got your work twisted. I wonder if I can show you here. Here we are. Can you see? You end up with a hole if you're not careful about how many stitches you have moving across from one to the other. And generally a cable knit or an Aran knit is meant to be warm. But when it's got holes like this, it's not, because the wind finds its way through those holes. Okay, so I never use a 4 by 4 crossover. The most I do is a 3.
Jane, can you just show us the count on your blue neck warmer?
So on the blue neck warmer, the setup row was a knit 4, purl 8.
Okay.
Knit 4, purl 8.
So when you say a 2 by 2 and a 3 by 3 and a 4 by 4, can you show me where you mean those?
So here is a 2 by 2.
Okay. So it's two
a 2 by 2 twist.
So it's 2 stitches on the right and 2 stitches on the left, and they're coming together and crossing over each other.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. A 3 by 3 would be 3 stitches and 3 stitches that would be crossing over each other.
So the actual cable stitches, the cable that's coming up in relief is 3 stitches.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. So here's a 3 by 3.
Okay. So it's a sort of
so you can see
cable.
It's a fatter cable, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. So actually just looking at this, this was something else that I wanted to talk to you about. When you're knitting cables or lace, you want the knitting stitches to show up. If you use a patterned yarn, can you see that my stitches aren't showing up very well? Mm. The variegations of the color in the yarn are enough of a pattern. And this is the Peaches and Cream Aran, and I've knitted a jersey out of this. And I knitted a sample first because I had thought that I would do a bit of cable in it. But having done the sample, I could see that the amount of work that would be needed to end up adding a pattern to it wasn't worth the effort, because it's not going to show up so well, because the color is enough of a pattern. So if you're going to spend the time doing a cable, and I do love doing cables, rather choose a yarn that is a solid color. Because even though I've done this in stripes, every stitch of my patterning is showing up. Nothing's lost. Okay. So, and the same goes for doing lace. If you're going to do lace, use a solid color, not a variegated yarn. The patterning that you stitch doesn't show. And also the colors, the speckles of the color in a variegation hide some of the definition of the pattern. Even here, where I've done the moss stitch, it's not looking like a very clear moss stitch. It's almost looking a bit messy, I think. Whereas where I've got it just plain, the colors are showing up beautifully.
And I especially like the pearl side of stocking stitch with the variegated yarn.
It does show up beautifully, yes. So the pearl side of the variegated has a very different look, and it's a much nicer look than even trying to do a moss stitch.
It's not worth the effort of the moss stitch.
It's not. It's not. So if you're going to use the variegated yarns, rather let the style of the cardigan or pullover or whatever you make be enough that you don't need to do any extra work, because the color is what plays the role. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions?
Gail, how are you finding this intro to knitting?
I can actually recall memories of Jane doing this cool cabling as a kid.
Awesome. Awesome. And the beautiful thing that you can't is you can just send her a message and say, I like this color and this pattern, please knit it for me.
It's a bit tricky. No, it's not that simple in postage kind of stuff.
True.
but that would be nice. Like, Jane, please whip me up this. That'll be great. Thanks. Bye. Imagine. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Thanks, Gail.
I love watching this.
Are there any other questions?
So can I ask a complicated question?
Yeah.
So if you wanted to, or how easy or difficult would it be to, for example, put the cable in a different color from the background?
Not that difficult at all. You would just need to remember that you're going to end up with a lot of tails.
You are?
Because every time you change color, you're either carrying your yarn from one section to the next, so you're going to have floats across the back.
Okay.
Or you're going to have one ball to deal with one line and another ball to deal with the next.
Okay.
So, and with the cable, because of the length of the pearl stitches, you can't hook any stitches over because that color is going to show in the front. So you'd have to carry float.
Okay.
So it's not impossible.
No. And then with the pattern that you have in front of you, you could have started where you did the rib with the sort of mock cable.
Yes.
If you had, it wouldn't actually have been a cable, it would have just been a 2-1 rib or something if you'd done it any other way. Could you have effectively done it with just little short cables?
Oh, you can. I've seen cardigans where they've done this as with a 2x2 cable, and they look really, really nice as well. And so your rib is made up of a whole lot of these all together.
Okay.
And actually, so can you see this?
Mm-hmm.
So here's a 2x2 cable. So this could very easily be a rib.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jane.